Welcome to the Profit Lab show and podcast. I am your host, Marie Tarosian, CPA and 10x certified business coach, and I'm so glad you are here. If you're new to the show, be sure to subscribe or follow us on whatever platform you are watching or listening to us on, so that you won't miss any of the episodes, which we drop every Wednesday at 12 noon Eastern time. And that's on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, Podbean, and all major podcast platforms. Today, we are continuing our conversation around pillar number 12 of the VALUEATION-MT Methodology, which is my main coaching and advisory methodology that I use with all my clients. So today we're going to be talking about legacy, impact, and identity. And I have to admit, I've been working on this a little bit in the last few days. So this is just such a timely conversation to have. As business owners, we usually spend, lots of time, years building our companies, and we pour our time in there, our energy, we give it all of our attention to growing them. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's in fact, in the beginning, that is exactly what we need to do. We have to put in all that effort, energy into building the business. However, over time, something can happen that we don't always recognize. We begin tying our identity, who we are, right into the business. We stop seeing it as something we own and start seeing it as who we are. Has that happened to you? I know it has happened to me. With that, I know some business owners just struggle with delegation. They struggle with succession planning or even taking time off, right? So it's not always because the business isn't ready for those things. It's just because they, or let's say we, the business owners, aren't ready yet. So today I want to really explore what it means to build a business that creates value while also building a life that has purpose beyond the business. And as I mentioned, this is something that I am, looking back and rebuilding a few pieces there. And this is just so very timely. So let's redefine what success looks like, okay? So one thing I've noticed is that our definition of success changes as we grow. What I thought of success, and I'm going to give myself as an example, is when thinking of success as an employee, that was something else. As an entrepreneur just starting out her business quite a few years ago, it was something else. And now, so many years in, over 7 years now, it's a whole different thing. And that's one of the reasons why I've been looking back and then rebuilding something. And I'll bring it up after. So in the beginning, success usually looks like, getting enough clients, we're trying to pay our own bills, we're trying to replace our paycheck going out of W-2, being a full-time employee to, just figuring out how to build this business and make it profitable. So it just requires a lot of time, and every one of those pieces feels like success to us. And as our businesses grow, success becomes more like, okay, now we have to hire people. We got to increase the level of revenues, or even expanding into new areas, new markets. So those goals are very, very important. And there's definitely nothing wrong with them. It's just what is required at different stages of the business. But eventually, as I said, many business owners reach a point where they start asking different questions. Instead of asking, how do I make more money? They start asking, what do I want all of this to lead to? What kind of life do I want to have beyond the business? What kind of a leader do I want to become? What kind of impact do I want to leave in my community? Those are very different questions. And I think they're also healthier questions because they shift the focus from simply accumulating more to creating something meaningful. So take note of these questions that I brought up and then set them aside so you can respond to them later. Okay. So the next phase I want to focus on is, what is legacy? And it's obviously not just money, right? When most people hear the word legacy, they often think about, your wealth and your wealth transfer. They think about, okay, we got to do estate planning. We got to figure out how we're passing money to our children. and what's going to happen after they're gone. Again, those things are very important. They matter, but it's not the whole picture. And again, this is something that I've been working on for myself, and I'm glad today's conversation is on it because I feel like I just went through the experience myself. Um, Legacy could also be the impact you have while you are here, not when you are gone, right? So think about it this way. Your current legacy could be the clients whose businesses are stronger because they worked with you. It could be the employees who became better leaders because you invested in them. It could be the systems, the processes, and all the ideas you created, and you created your IP that continue helping people even if you stop working today. So legacy isn't just something you leave behind someday. What you're building, it is every day through the decisions you make and the way you lead. That's your current legacy. All right, so moving on to the next phase that I want to talk about is your identity beyond the business. And this is, let's think through this. And this is probably one of the hardest conversations we entrepreneurs may have, right? When so much of our life is so revolved around the business we're building, it's easy for us to identify like as if the business is us. And I know from a marketing standpoint, as we start out, that's sometimes what people say, right? You are the business. I get that. So I totally get that. You are the face of the business. I get that too. But what if it's beyond that though? Your identity is beyond your business. You being face of the business is just one of the things, but your overall identity is beyond just your business. And that's something a lot of business owners would struggle with, right? They would struggle with, let's say, delegation, because within their understanding, everything has to be done through them. They might say, hey, I want more time with my family, but they keep on taking work back from their team and not really going back to the family. They might say they want to sell their business or maybe step back for a bit, but they can't even imagine what they would do if they were to step back. And I just had a recent conversation with a colleague, a fellow CPA, and this is his situation right now. And he is in the process of making those minor changes to get to the point, but there's still questions out there as to how the business will run without him in it. So this is a really, really challenging situation, but I think it's very, very important that we take some time to think about who are we beyond the business. Let's not forget that. So if your sense of worth depends completely on the revenues that you're making or your current title or how busy you are, it's going to be a continuous pressure on yourself to keep proving yourself, like as if you're not worth it. You'll overwork because slowing down feels uncomfortable. I know I fight through this quite a lot, because whenever I try to sit down and just think, hey, I'm going to just sit down and not focus on something, and barely 15 minutes and I'm checking the phone, I'm checking my social media and checking comments. I can make sure that I'm responding to every comment. And sometimes I have to stop myself, right? So you can't just do it all. You could also struggle to trust other people because you feel responsible for everything in your business. And you're right, you have taken the risk. You are the entrepreneur, you're the business owner. But it doesn't mean the business cannot run without you. You might also have a hard time stepping into the next season of your life. The business has become part of who you are and what defines you. So you don't know what that next season is in your life. So remember that your business is something you build. It isn't who you are. And I think that's a very important distinction because businesses evolve. Sometimes we sell them. Sometimes we change our direction in the business. And sometimes we just start something new, right? So who you are shouldn't disappear just because your business is changing. And now I want to get into how you can design your next chapter, right? One question I like asking my clients is, if your business could successfully operate without you for 6 months, what would you choose to do with your time? And I have to go through this exercise myself too. And I think it's very important. Again, just like you earlier, I asked you to put aside those questions I asked. You can always watch this again and get that back. But I also put it in summary format in the description box. I want you to think about these questions too. I'm going to repeat it. If your business could successfully operate by itself for 6 months, what would you choose to do with your time? I know some people will be like, oh, I'll go travel. I'm going to go see this and this. I have so many places in my, in the bucket list, and I want to hit those. Great. Others might want to spend more time with their family, not necessarily on travel, but in other ways. Some want to mentor younger entrepreneurs. Others might want to do more teaching, speaking, or maybe even investing in other businesses. So obviously there's no right answer here. The point is, what would you choose to do? Have you even set aside time to think about it? Right? Sometimes we're so busy running the business that we never even stop to really ask those questions. So really, really important. Your next chapter does not have to wait until you retire. It could actually start now. So maybe this means you create more space on your calendar to, say, go fishing with your kids. I know my husband and my son, they love fishing, and that's something they do all the time. So maybe that's what you want to do. Maybe it's mentoring someone in your field. Maybe it's writing that book you've always thought about, but never really got to it. So clear that calendar, a time dedicated for that. Maybe it's a different way to serve your community. So the idea is that your business can definitely create its own value through the product services that you do, but you can create value as well. All right. As we come closer to wrapping up, you know that we always start with the profit question of the week. So here it is. If money were fully handled, if your business can consistently generate everything you need financially, how would you choose to spend your time and energy? Again, this is not a rush answer. And I gave you some examples earlier. All I want you to do is honestly think about it, right? And then once you think of that answer, okay, that's going to give you a lot of clarity on what really matters to you beyond the business. Okay. And now I want to get into the actionable items, because I always want to keep these podcasts, as a very actionable, teachable moment for you guys. It's all about action. Otherwise, it's just talk. So here's what I want you to do. 3 things. First, write yourself a 1-page legacy letter. That means you're going to have to be creative. You're going to have to really step away from all the craziness. Give yourself some time to think through it. Obviously have my questions available, because that's going to help trigger something. So that's going to trigger your creativity. So describe what you want your work to stand for. So whatever you're doing now, what do you want that to stand for? And it's not about your accomplishments. It's not about resume, right? All the awards and stuff. No, not that. But how would you hope people experiencing work with you, and what kind of impact you hope to leave to them? Okay, so this is a 1-page legacy letter to yourself. Number 2, I want you to make 2 lists. Write down 3 ways you're already living the legacy that you have imagined or just wrote about. Okay, then write down 3 areas where there's still a gap between the leader you want to become and the leader you're currently being. So whatever is that gap, 3 things that you need to work on. And finally, share your vision with someone. Share it in the comments right here. I read each and every one of them. So I'd love to hear, what your legacy letter was and what is it that stood out to you. when you got that clarity. So, and I know whenever we say something out loud or we really write it down, it creates a bigger impact in us. It just really reminds us who we are and why we're here for. All right. So thank you so much for joining me today for another episode of the Profit Lab show and podcast. I hope today's conversation encourages you to think beyond just revenue and beyond the next business goal, however important they are. Building a successful business is an incredible achievement. It is a lot of hard work, but it's only one part of your life that you're creating. So as you continue building your business, don't forget to also build the life, the relationships, and the impact you want the business to support. Next week, we'll wrap up pillars 11 and 12 by bringing everything together into one practical roadmap. We're going to connect the time mastery we talked about before, the wealth, exit planning, and the legacy, so you can see how they all work together as part of building a business that creates a lasting value. Until next time, keep building intentionally, keep leading with purpose, and keep creating lasting value. I'll see you next episode.